Well, we're all awake. Welcome, Denison community, to the final Beck series reading of the year. And what an incredible year of readings we've had. Thanks so much to the family of Harriet Ewins Beck, whose generous gift funded the endowment that has supported such events that enrich our cultural life here at Denison for more than 50 years. For those of you who don't know me, I am Julia Kolchinsky, Assistant Professor of English, focusing on creative writing and specifically poetry. It is my great honor to welcome Tiana Clark, whose poetry and person I've long admired. And teaching her work this semester only reaffirmed how much it continues to inspire young writers and scholars. I want to extend deep thanks to Megan Hancock and Sam Smith from the Denison Museum for hosting this reading and always welcoming literature into this stunning space. Also, thanks so much to Margot Singer, English professor and director of the Creative Writing Program, as well as Jen Leonard, professor of creative writing here, for their help with facilitation and coordination of this visit. And a huge thanks to Jean for coordinating all the delicious food, right? And the drinks, it's marvelous. And while this is our final Beck event of the semester, don't miss the many upcoming opportunities to hear readings from our students, many of whom are in this very room. And these include the writing competition winners next week, the senior readings, and at the end of this month, on April 30th, just note it down for yourself, there's gonna be a collaborative exhibit and poetry reading by my ekphrasis poetry class, and ekphrasis means poetry responding to art, along with students from Sheila Restack's photography class, so stay tuned for that. But now, for the reason we're all here, I want to share just briefly the first time I met Tiana in person. I accosted her with a giant hug. Having savored her poems for years and then finally seeing her in the most fabulous yellow pantsuit from across the room, I couldn't help myself. And it is fitting because her poetry is one of unrestrained, unabashed joy and love for the body, the Black body in particular, love for the self in every line that aches and moans, because every line of her work invites us, no, dares us to feel as deeply as these poems feel. I could go on, trust me, but it is our tradition to hand the introductions over to a star student whose own work resonates with our visitors. So please join me in welcoming, with a big round of applause because it's hard to be up here, rising senior creative writing major and incredibly gifted poet Leah Cashin.
I was first introduced to Tiana's work in my ekphrastic poetry class with Dr. Kolchinsky. Thank you for that introduction. And I immediately fell in love with her tremendous command over affect, image, and music. As a queer and mixed race woman myself, Tiana's poems spoke to me, and her work actively breathes life into Black history, particularly stories that have been silenced. And her many epigraphs speak in conversation with artists both in and beyond the confines of poetry. At the center of Tiana's poetry is ekphrasis, which she uses not only as a genesis for her work, but also as a form of radical self-love. Tiana's courage and vulnerability serves as an inspiration to take up space and to write into uncomfortability. As she writes, quote, "I'm not afraid to write what I need to survive," end quote. Tiana Clark is the author of the poetry collections Scorched Earth, just out from Simon & Schuster, I Can't Talk About the Trees Without the Blood, winner of the 2017 Agnes Lynch Starrett Prize, and Equilibrium winner of the 2016 Frost Place Chapbook Competition. Clark is a winner for the 2020 Kate Tufts Discovery Award from Claremont Graduate University, a 2019 National Endowment for the Arts Literature Fellow, and the 2015 Rattle Poetry Prize. She is a recipient of the 2021 to 2022 Amy Lowell Poetry Traveling Scholarship and 2019 Pushcart Prize. Clark was the 2017 through 2018 J.C. and Ruth Hall's Poetry Fellow at the Wisconsin Institute of Creative Writing. Her writing has appeared in The New Yorker, Poetry Magazine, The Atlantic, The Washington Post, Virginia Quarterly Review, Tin House Online, Kenyon Review, BuzzFeed News, American Poetry Review, Oxford American, The Best American Poetry 2022, and elsewhere. Clark is currently working on a memoir in essays, Begging to be Saved, reckoning with Black burnout, millennial divorce, faith, art making, and exploring historical methods of Black survival. She is currently the Grace Hazard Conkling Writer in Residence at Smith College. As you hear Tiana's work read aloud, I hope you will be enamored not only with the power of her lyricism, but also with the critical history that she brings to our attention. Now more than ever, we must remember the past and acknowledge its echoes into the present. I challenge you all to hold onto something from this reading, a name, a myth, or other historical thread, and engage with it later on, even if it's just a quick Google search. So without further delay, I'm pleased to introduce Tiana Clark.
Wow, thank you, Leah. That was so wonderful. And I love the call to action. You're giving everyone homework. I love it. Good evening. Thank you so much, Julia, for bringing me to Denison. I'm so excited to be here and to read with you all. I just want to start and say David Baker is here. Where are you, David? I'll never forget, David visited my cohort when I was at Vanderbilt, my first year of graduate school, and he said something that I've actually thought about. And he said, we were all asking questions, publishing, first book, how do you do this, how do you do that? He just said, there is no hurry. That's the last thing I wanted to hear as a grad student. But I still think about it because you were so right. And now I tell my students that. I'm like, there is no hurry. Even though they're all trying to be on the hamster wheel of success and work. But your voice is in my head, David, so I'm really happy that you're here. Did I thank you, Julia? Did I say your name? Okay, good. Okay. Just want to make sure everyone's being thanked. So a new book just came out March 4th, so I'm so excited to be here. Speaking of no hurry, I intentionally sat on this book. I started this book in the wake of 2016 when I felt really small and invisible in the political landscape. And it's interesting now, looking back. You know, Adrienne Rich has this quote, I'm gonna mess it up, but something like, poems are like dreams, and that you put in them what you don't know you know. For me, I kind of want to put a little twist on it, that I think like poems are like bug out bags, and that you put what you think you need to survive for the future that you don't know now. And I think I was writing these poems as like tools for survival that I didn't know that I would need now. And so it's so interesting to have this moment, to have this book in 2025. So the book actually starts with an epigraph from Araceli Kermai, which reads, I've been remembering the story of Salt, Lot's wife, but you tell me something the story never did. Look back at the burning city, still live. And I wanted the book to start there because I really liked this idea that Araceli was doing in kind of reimagining the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and that when the woman is looking back at the city, she's not just destroyed by her disobedience. She's not destroyed by looking back at destruction. Because the book starts in a place of psychological ruin while it's also encountering historical ruin. There's also another quote from Rilke, then I know that there is room in me for a second huge and timeless life. And Maggie Smith posted that when I was going through my divorce in the pandemic, and I just printed it out, I put it above my desk. Because I think if you go through a deep loss, whether that's a divorce or you lose someone that you love, it kind of shatters a future that you thought was ahead of you. And so I just held on to these words from Rilke, that second huge and timeless life. And it was just a hope for a long time, but now I'm living that second huge and timeless life. So I had to add Rilke here in the prologue. And I'll start with the prologue poem, Proof. I once made a diorama from a shoebox for a man I loved. I was never a crafty person, but found tiny items at an art store and did my best to display the beginning bud of our little love. A scene recreating our first kiss in his basement apartment, origin story of an 8-year marriage. In the dollhouse section, I bought a small ceiling fan, recreated his black leather couch, even found minuscule soda cans for the cardboard counters that I cut and glued. People get weird about divorce, think it's contagious, think it dirty. I don't need to make it holy, but it purifies. It's clear. Sometimes the science is simple. Sometimes people love each other, but don't need each other anymore. Though I think the tenderness can stay if you want it to. I forgive and keep forgiving, mostly myself. People still ask, what happened? I know you want a reason, a caution to avoid, but life rarely tumbles out a cheat sheet. Sometimes nobody is the monster. I keep seeing him for the first time at the restaurant off of West End where we met and worked and giggled at the micros. I keep seeing his crooked smile and open server book fanned with cash before we would discover and enter another world and come back barreling into this one, astronauts for the better and for the worse, but still spectacular as we burn back inside this atmosphere to live separate lives, inside other shadow boxes we cannot see. I remember I said I hate you once when we were driving back to Nashville, our last long distance. I didn't mean it. I said it to hurt him, and it did. I regret that I was capable of causing pain. I think it's important to implicate the self. The knife shouldn't exit the cake clean. There is still some residue, some proof of puncture, some scars you graze to remember the risk. You know, I think self-implication is something really important to me. In my first book, I had a poem where I was writing about an incident that happened with my family. And I remember Sharon Olds talking about this, that no one wants to have a poet in the family because, we're intense people. We're also watching all of you all the time, taking notes. I always have my students write self-portrait poems, and it's so fascinating to me because they're always like, oh, this is awkward, this is weird, I don't want to talk about myself. And I'm like, good, you should feel the ethics of that gaze, right? Because if that feels awkward to have that attention on you, you should understand that if you're ever going to write about somebody else. And I think it took me a long time to figure out that balance. And I think self-implication was a portal for me. And I kind of see it as like acid in a dish. Like it just kind of cuts the bitterness a little bit. So that's been something that's kind of helped me kind of work through that. One of my favorite poems is actually from Natasha Trethewey. It's a poem called Elegy. And the speaker is fishing with their dad, and their fishing lines are crossed. And she has this moment in the poem where the speaker says, I knew I'd save this all for an elegy I'd write someday. I was that ruthless. And I think about that line all the time because it is a type of ruthlessness, right? Like the father is still alive, but she's like, oh. And as poets, sometimes we have like these metaphor-making machines that feel so compulsive. So I do think if you have a poem with difficult subject matter, one, there's no hurry. Write the poem, be patient, let it reveal itself to you. But also if you're writing about something that hurts you, I always ask my students too, if it's possible, it's not always possible, but is there a way to have empathy for someone that hurts you? And how can you also balance that in the poem as well? It's difficult, and not everyone possibly deserves that, but it's something to think about and consider. I like the way Josh says black love is radical. Tonight, I went to the park again because I couldn't stop crying. I don't remember my dreams, and when I do, someone is always dying. Someone is always grabbing my arm when I wake up. Once, I woke to my own bite marks on my bicep. Tonight, my friend Josh said he did not exist in his own romantic imagination, and I felt a zap of acknowledgement dip through my chest like a tiny black bat skittering the delicate lake for little bugs. Tonight, I wanted to ask a better question but couldn't, so I told Josh why I wanted to live instead. Tonight, wherever the sunset smeared the pink ghost in the sky from dusk to dust and other kinds of dreamy darknesses, tonight, I'll probably call my ex-husband and say nothing, then hang up. I'll open the fridge and say nothing too. I'll take one more bite of tiramisu. What a delightful word. You kind of have to sing to say it. It's true, go home tonight. Just go, tiramisu. It's a little, it goes up with it, tiramisu. I usually write very long poems, and Amy Nezeka-Matatul asked me for a poem, and I sent her this one, and she actually cut it in half at the tiramisu line. First of all, I'll do whatever Amy says, but it was so interesting because it was a moment for me where I was like, oh wait, I don't even remember honestly what the rest of the poem was about, because once she made that cut, I resaw the poem, and I was like, oh wow, and how she lingers on that song of that image of the tiramisu and the word, and It's just good to have a good editor, or you find trusted readers, maybe in your class or your professor, that maybe can see things that you don't. Although I am team too much and team excess, but it's every now and then I can have a bit of restraint, but it has to come from somebody else. My therapist wants to know about my relationship to work. And I dedicate this to all the students. Finals are approaching. This is for you. I hustle upstream, I grasp, I grind, I control and panic, poke balloons in my chest, always popping there. Always my thoughts thump, thump. I snooze, wake, and go boom. All day like this, I short my breath. I scroll and scroll. I see what you wrote. I like, I heart. My thumb so tired, my head bit down, but not in prayer, heavy from the looking. I see your face, your phone-lit faces. I tap your food 2 times for more hearts. I retweet an email, yes, yes, yes. And then I cry and need to say no, no, no. Why does it take so long to reply? I FOMO and shout. I read. I never enough. New book, new post, new ping, a new tab, then another. Papers on the floor, scattered and stacked. So many journals, unbroken white spines waiting. Did you hear that new? I start to text back, ellipsis, then I forget. I bulk, I lazy the bed. I wallow when I write. I truth when I lie. I throw a book when a poem undoes me. I underline Clifton, today we are possible. I start from image. I begin with Phyllis Wheatley. I begin with Phyllis Wheatley. I begin with Phyllis Wheatley reaching for coal. I start with a napkin, receipt, or my hand. I muscle the memory. I stutter the page. I fail, hit delete, scratch out one more line. I sonnet, then break form. I make tea, use 2 bags. Rooibos again. I bathe now. Epsom salt, no books or phone, just water and the sound of water filling. Glory be my buoyant body, bowl of me. Yes, lavender, more bubbles and bath bomb. Of course, some candles too. All alone with Coltrane, my favorite Naima. For his wife, now for me, inside my own womb. Again, I child back, I float, I sing, I simple and humble, eyes close. I lower my voice. Was it a psalm? Don't know, but I stopped. I was talking with Julie on the way here about what does rest really mean? Like people say rest, rest, but I was like, how do you actually do that? Something that the memoir will be investigating once I finish it. I'm trying not to burn myself out writing the book on Black burnout. I wanted to touch really quickly on Phyllis Wheatley. It's interesting now, I live in Boston, and I got to visit her first book. It's actually at the Boston Tea Party Museum, because I didn't realize through some research that her book was actually on the Dartmouth, which was one of the first ships that was attacked in the Boston Tea Party. They left the other cargo alone because they were just focused for the East India tea, but she couldn't get access to her books for a while. And I've been thinking about her a lot because we have her first book when she was a slave, but we don't have her second book, which she was working on when she died, when she was free. And I think about that a lot as I hold my second full-length collection, because for me, I really trace my literary ancestry back to her, the first Black female poet in America. And I think about her in London, kind of bartering her freedom with her master's son, Nathaniel, and what that was like for her to take the ship back, this kind of reverse middle passage, knowing that she was going to be free, knowing that she had her book in her hands to sell, that was she can get the profit from. And I just think about her on that ship quite often. So shout out to Phyllis, wherever you are. After the reading, I love reading this poem now because it's kind of become my disclaimer of what not to say to me after reading. We're going to do a Q&A, so don't be scared. I mean, you can ask me questions. Just don't ask these kind of questions that you'll see in the poem. But I've been thinking about the aftercare of art making, especially, as a Black female artist. And, the Q&A can kind of become this wild, wild west where people feel like they can just say anything to you. And when I was first starting off in my poetry career, I felt like I had to answer every question. I'm a deep people pleaser. I've been working on it. You heard the therapist. But I remember in grad school, Carl Phillips actually came to Vanderbilt, and I saw him do something that I didn't know that you were allowed to do. There was a PhD student who asked this very, those like questions that aren't a question. I'm going to show how smart I am, and it's just basically a comment, and they're so annoying. I call them like the comment. It's just like, you could tell the student was just wanting to like, perform something, and Carl was just like, And then when the student was finally done, Carl just goes, yeah, sure, next question. And I was like, wait, we're allowed to do that? Like, as I shoved a pulled pork sandwich in my mouth with Carolina Gold barbecue sauce oozing out the sides like neon yellow lava. After the reading, someone asked me if I still pray to God as I sipped a fizzy Diet Coke and the ice cubes huddled and softly clinked around my upper lip, leaving a wet mustache. After the reading, someone said they had been divorced too, and then scurried away in a way that I completely understood. After the reading, a woman told me that I was worthy as if I was shattered. While I picked up crudité with a copious dollop of ranch dressing. After the reading, a white woman thanked me for my angry poems. I told her they were about my joy, and then she touched my forearm and said, no, they were about your rage, insisting. After the reading, someone said they cried. Another gave me a kind word, thank you. After, I went home and changed into my cheetah print pajamas. I wrapped my hair and brushed my teeth. I got in bed and played a sci-fi show on my laptop. The actors on the show were trying to find a way to talk to aliens by using math and pheromones. I Googled the height of one of the actors. He is 6'4". I fell asleep while watching the show about the people in space trying to communicate in first contact. Intergalactic noises beeped and swirled around the room like bees. So in the middle of the collection, I have a very long poem called The First Black Bachelorette. And this kind of became the dam opening up inside of me and really kind of the fulcrum of this collection. I was driving to a reading in Northern Alabama, and I was listening to a podcast called Commonplace with Rachel Zucker, and she was interviewing Roger Reeves and Natalie Diaz. Roger Reeves is a black male poet, and he said something that utterly exploded my mind. He was working on his second book at the time, and he was working on long poems, and Rachel asked him, why was he kind of leaning into length? And he said that as a black poet, he found himself in life often stepping out of the way when a white person passed him. And it was kind of this like unconscious respectability politics that was still left over of like being a kid and his mom being like, you gotta watch yourself, watch your body, or if a police officer, you gotta be careful. And he was like, I know why that instinct is there, but I don't want that instinct to be there when I'm writing. And when he said that, I was like, oh my God, where am I doing that in my writing? Like, where am I limiting myself? Where am I, there's that Paul Laurence Dunbar, we wear the mask that grins and lies. Did I have that mask in my own work? And I was like, oh my God, what are the ways that I'm holding myself back? And so when he said that, I just felt this poem start brewing inside me, and I did the reading, and I could just feel it was like a storm was swelling. I could feel the forces. And when I got back to my hotel room, I was just like, let's go. I was just gonna give myself the full permission to write a long ass poem and not apologize and just like chase a type of breathlessness and just see what would happen. And so this poem kind of barreled out, and it's actively trying to take up space. It's trying to be audacious. I always say my poems are braver than I am, and I probably made them so long because I want to inhabit that freedom that I don't often feel in the real world. The First Black Bachelorette. When Brian was kissing Rachel and slid his hand inside her hair, her long, long hair, I wondered if he felt threaded tracks of weave and what he thought when he felt her weave. Was he startled or did he know? But when he reached for her, I felt his fingers on my scalp too. I did. Through TV, I swear, I was wincing. My white guy doesn't like fake things, but I like my fake hair long and my real hair protected, my glory tucked and hidden. Something easy and fast. I'm hoping it will grow too. I wonder who does Rachel's hair in the show, blending her leave out with her natural hair, who slicks her edges down with good grease and a boar brush when the wind blows back her baby hairs. There was an episode once on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air with the actress Tisha Campbell. The premise, they were on a date and stuck in a basement for hours. She stripped off her weave, fake nails, contacts, and eyelashes. She molted. Will then asks, now what else on your body can I get at the mall? RuPaul says we're all born naked and the rest is drag. Derek has a list of funny drag names, and I want one. I want to be called what I really am, or what I pretend to be, which I guess in a way is me, or someone who I think might be beautiful enough to be approached, discovered, someone who doesn't have to pay for movers, someone who walks into a party and doesn't have to be anxious because the privilege of their beauty makes them at rest, and people find vacations in their faces. I require something fake, woven and glued, stuck to my body, but not of my body. How does a body even start? Sometimes my eyes feel thick and weird from fresh eyelash extensions. In the beginning, my head hurt from the braided ropes of hair encircling my scalp tight. But you want it tight, she says. You want the cornrows so small that your fake hair looks passable, and hope you take the pain. It takes so damn long to be almost beautiful. I've sat in salon chairs all day with black women behind me, laboring and taming my mane. I like the pattern crop circles carved into my scalp right before the wefts of somebody else's Brazilian hair are sewn like human icing into mine, delicious. I want the fire to smell a type of threaten me and walk away. I want the fire to know I was already consumed, burned inside my belonging. There is a hankering, a hungry choir that craves money and porn, meaning my thoughts are well lit, staged, and faking it too. Even my soul is pre-oiled, fluffed, bleached, waxed, nubile licking, staring down the camera to ash. The trick is looking like you like it, like you enjoy getting slammed, which is why I like being groomed, getting yanked, painted, cut, and plucked. I've been on all fours as a woman ripped me from my center where I split in jeweled halves. I did not yell as I bit my lip, grabbed the corners. I enjoy how people look at me when they think I might be beautiful. I enjoy porn best when I think they might be enjoying themselves too, when there might be real pleasure at stake. But who can say really? Not showing pain gets you paid. And yet Rachel, who scratches your dandruff like tea cake in chapter 11 of Their Eyes Were Watching God, who detangles and combs your hair with deep conditioner, who wraps your hair at night. Has Brian seen you in your silk bonnet yet? You know it's real when you're riding on top with your hair wrapped. It takes a lot of money to look this trashy, Dolly Parton says. Lala Lamont says she was never ugly, just poor. I want my teeth fixed and chiseled, but veneers are so expensive. I hide my coffee-stained crooked things. Cardi B raps, got a bag and fixed my teeth. Hope you hoes know it ain't cheap. So I try to hide the unevenness in my teeth when I talk, which means sometimes I don't talk when I can see myself. I try to hide the gaps in how sharp my teeth really are, how animal, how lower class, how cash poor my mouth really is. I don't look pretty when I come, my mouth open, my jaw slack and sideways pulling spit, my deadened eyes fixed on one corner in the room, this time a chair, this time a corner half in shadow. This time I just wanted to watch a black woman on TV fall in love, for entertainment, for escape. The best cure for microaggressions is shitty TV, and again, Cardi B. Ahmad says, for us American blacks, we are post-apocalyptic. The end is not near, but behind us. We are what survived our 12 million enslaved, shipped, and spread. We are what was not hung, dumped, or flung from the zong, splashing and graveless, lest you think the ocean a tombstone. The ocean is not scared or sacred enough. But we out here, anyway, trying to save ourselves still sprinkling black pepper behind our feet as we run away. But there is no north now. We find the drinking gourd within ourselves, guiding stars within our own black-lit blood we glow. Maybe it's true then, that beauty is a type of survivor's guilt, a sackcloth I suffer and itch and injure from and for, or rather that I am seen through sin. Dirty Hottentot zoo is my body. I was such a terrible Lady Macbeth in high school. Her mania didn't make sense to me until it was activated in me when a man left me in my blood in 20s. There's a type of grief I carry in my hands, some dark, unwipeable thought, some liquid other like my daddy's DNA, his spots. I'm trying to cover them with this talk of beauty. I'm repenting for something, I don't know what. I wasn't meant to be born, but ain't I a beautiful bastard? And doesn't everybody want to be cleaned by slices of gelled light? Yeah, it's true. I want my eyebrows microbladed for $700. There are specific times when I don't want to be wanted. Number 1, at night. Number 2, when I'm alone. Number 3, at night, when I'm walking alone to my car. 4, an empty parking lot. 5, a man approaches. 6, he sniffs me, knowing that familiar scent of pressure and piss from other men who have marked me too. 7, didn't they touch me because I was beautiful? Or did they sense what was easy to poke? I've always wondered what made a slave beautiful enough to be raped. What about the body made it worth it to commit a sin on what they deemed a damn body? Maybe beauty had nothing to do with it. Of course, it's always about power. But maybe there was a type of sheen, lacquer on black bodies baking under the sun, funk from the field, the house slave dilating from room to room, a physiological scent that niggles, perhaps. How close desire is to a type of terror, owned and familiar. When I get ready with golden highlighter, is that what I am? What I accentuate? My cheekbone to sparkle in the spectral light of my dead belling inside me. The sparkle of dead slaves is forever in me, still so iridescent. Keats wrote, beauty is truth, truth beauty, that is all. I don't know what that means. I've had some dark inkling about the succinct finality. Even in class, I pretended to know what the poem was about. When I would discuss ekphrasis and the Grecian urn with my students, telling them about art, responding to art, and how to make a static image sing. But even then, I was pretending. I don't want to be dumb. My worst fear, a bunch of students would all point and call me a fraud. I once asked Mark, my professor in grad school, when I would stop feeling like an imposter. He said I would feel this way for the rest of my life, which I think is closer to some type of truth, which is attractive because it provides relief. To know everyone might just be as insecure and afraid of others as me, and probably watching The Bachelorette on Monday nights. Like when I found out on the podcast Commonplace, Sharon Olds loves the show too. I squealed because I wasn't alone anymore. I'm not writing for mastery or legacy. I couldn't care less. In fact, I might be writing against it. A way of talking back to beauty, back to the spoiled fruit on the altar of my body, to the pressurized gaze on my skin every damn day. I'm hyper-aware that I'm hyper-visible, says Hope Oloye, 20, from Newham, East London, the only Black biomedical student in her year at Oxford. Who hasn't been broken by a touch? Who hasn't been barbed by a glare? You can't write poems about beauty when the streets are full of racists and rapists and the president is a pussy grabber. I want to peg the canon, so I'm running back and forth between the house of silence and the house of shame, shouting over and over again with ink-stained fingers on days when I write with Dwinde, no one can touch me. Did you think you were gonna hear about Cardi B tonight? It's so interesting. I wrote my first actually ekphrastic poem was actually off of Rihanna's Bitch Better Have My Money music video. And it was really interesting because it didn't do well in my graduate school workshop, which I share that to say to you, like, maybe don't listen to your workshop because that poem also won a Pushcart Prize. But my professor in grad school said, Tiana, I don't think you should write about pop culture. And I was like, why? And she was like, don't you care about legacy, mastery? And I was like, in my mind, I was like, no. It's so interesting. One of my favorite poets is Terrence Hayes, and one of my favorite poems is Lighthead's Guide to the Galaxy. And in the poem, he says, I'd rather have what my daddy calls scrimp. He says discreet, it means the street just out of sight. Not what you see, but what you perceive, that's poetry. Not the noise, but its rhythms and arrangement of derangements. I'll eat you to live. That's poetry. And for me, this idea of like poetry as a means of survival, it's urgent, it's immediate. And isn't every writer pulling from the world around them, right? And I don't like this idea that Cardi B is like low art because it's accessible, and that like Keats is high art. And I like actually smashing those things together to see what they do in a poem. So if anything, I'm writing against this idea of legacy. It's interesting, I had a reading on Tuesday, and Ocean Vuong was in conversation with me, and we were talking about this, and he said something so profound. He was like, it's so interesting, the things that are built to last forever are actually so harmful to our environment. Like look at plastics. It's just like, it was a fascinating discussion of this idea of why would you want something to live forever? He was like, so many beautiful things are ephemeral, a sunset, a butterfly. And so, I don't know, I've just been kind of thinking about that lately, kind of holding on to that. Okay, I'm gonna give you a bird poem as a little breather in between. I don't really write bird poems. This is probably my first and only one. But it was the pandemic, we were all in a dark place, and all you could do was just walk. And I never do like poem a day challenges because I don't like feeling that pressure. But again, it's a pandemic, and I was like, well, I have to be motivated to do something. And so in Centennial Park in Nashville, I was just sitting by this lake, and this moment happened. I've actually been thinking about image lately. Jenny George was just at Smith College, and she said something I've been thinking about. I was discussing with my students how to balance mystery and clarity in a poem, because you students love to be mysterious. You love to be so opaque. I don't know why. But it's so funny because when I ask my students what's in the poem, they'll tell me this whole novel. And I'm like, I want to connect with you, right? And again, there's a place for lyric poetry, right? But even if it's lyric poetry, what emotion are you grounding down into? Can I know it? Can you tell me? I don't know. But I think Jenny George said something about maybe mystery and clarity aren't in opposition. Maybe there's a bothness about it. And she said the image kind of holds that idea of that bothness. And so I was thinking about that with this bird in this poem. I stare at a cormorant. I stare at a cormorant with its waterlogged wings spread open, drying off on a rock in the middle of a man-made lake after diving for food. And it makes me think about wonder, and it makes me want to pry and stretch my shy arms open to the subtle summer wind, slicing through the park, sliding over my skin like a stream of people blowing candles out over my feathery body. And it makes me think about my church when I was a kid, and how I lifted my hands to Jesus, hoping for surrender, but often felt nothing, except for the rush of fervent people wanting to be delivered from their aching present pain, and how that ache changed the smell in the room to money, and how I pinched my face, especially my eyes tighter, reached my hands higher, how I, like the cormorant, stood in the middle of the sanctuary, so exposed and open, and wanted so much to grasp the electric weather rushing through the drama of it all, like a shout in the believer's scratchy throat. I don't go to church anymore. But today I woke up early and meditated. I closed my eyes and focused on a fake seed in my hand and put my hands over my heart to shove the intention inside my chest to blossom. I'm still stumbling through this life hoping for anyone or something to save me. I'm still thinking about the cormorant who disappeared when I was writing this poem. I was just looking down and finishing a line, and then I looked back up. Gone. Thank you for the couple snaps. I heard them. Thank you. Thank you. It's over here. Yeah. You know. Okay, so I love epigraphs, as you mentioned. And, oh no, okay, I was going to do the sestina. Do you guys want epigraphs or sestina? I'll do a poll. Okay. I'll do sestina. But I have a love for epigraph, and it's in the collection. And I just want to say, I am team too much, and don't let anyone limit if you are also on team too much, don't let anyone limit your too muchness. You can make a space for your obsessions, and so that's what I did in that poem. But I will do the sestina. It's interesting. My beloved mentor actually just passed away last year, Bill Brown. He was my first creative writing teacher when I was 15 years old, and he utterly changed my life. He was the first person to read me Lee Young Lee and Rita Dove and Sharon Olds. And he was one of those people, when you would walk with him, we had to read Thoreau and Almaden Pond, and he would do these walks. He would know every flora and fauna, every tree, every plant. He just had this archive inside of him. And he was in my life, my whole entire life, after high school. And we would go on these long walks together, and we'd meet in coffee shops, and he'd always be giving me tons of books. And this might be surprising to you because I look so together right now, but I was a little rebellious in high school because I was so, I didn't understand why there was all this restriction. I hated the 5-paragraph essay, and I would always write my own essay, and my English teachers would be like, Tiana, great content, but you have to stick to the form, and I was like, why? It's a little mouthy. But Bill Brown took his time with me and was really patient with me. And I didn't know, it's really interesting, I think, when you're growing up and you don't know what you want to do or you don't know what you're good at. And then poetry came into my life, and I was like, oh, this is how my brain works. And that felt really powerful, and also felt really illuminating to have a teacher say, you're good at something. And one of the last days I was leaving Nashville for the Amy Lowell scholarship, we get to travel the world for a year. I just happened to go to this greenway near my house, and I actually on accident ran into him, and we went on a long walk together. And he told me that when he was in grad school, that's when he found out he was dyslexic, and it was a teacher that kind of asked him about it, that took time and was patient with him, and that's how he was able to kind of be the teacher who he is today. And because that professor was kind and curious with him, he passed on that kind and curiousness to me, which I now pass on to my students. And I didn't know that would be our last walk together. And so when I read the poem, you're gonna be like, this has nothing to do with him, but just to know that this happens in that same place that we walked. But this is called Broken Sestina, Reaching for Black Joy. Oh, I forgot. Okay, wait, let me circle back. Well, when I was in grad school, I was really afraid to write in form because Bill Brown was kind of like a beatnik hippie poet, like Ginsberg, O'Hara, which I love. So I had this kind of free verse style. So when I got to grad school, we had to write in form, like sestinas and villanelles, and I got really scared because I was like, wait a second, what if I write a sestina close to form and I can't do it? Does this mean I'm not a poet anymore? And one time I was working on a ghazal, which is like an ancient Persian form, and I was working with Ross Gay at the time, and I was like, I'm having trouble with this ghazal, can you help me with it? And he was like, just break it. And I was like, what? He's like, just break it. And I was like, we're allowed to do that? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh. And so for me, I found this energy of making and breaking forms that was really exciting to me. So this is Broken Sestina, Reaching for Black Joy. Yesterday, I was smashed with the rush of fresh honeysuckle from the greenway near my house where I walk every day. I've been trying to write a poem about buried black bodies, but all I want to write about is black joy and my pleasure and black love and black lives that don't end with viral death. So I've stopped consuming the news. I've logged off of social media for a break. Black bodies are buried in the stickiness of history. Every day, bodies become the next viral death. And yet each day, I want to write a poem about pleasure. Black pleasure at the root instead of viral death. What name now? What black litany? What black elegy is repeated on the news? This cycle, Dante write. I don't know the details yet because I can't handle the details yet, but I'm mourning him still. This stanza broke the rules, so what? The stanza will break back inside the form of honeycomb to suck the lyric into compression, reboot, restraint, the grief joy every day when I walk around Sylvan Park near a broken track of burned black bodies. But all I want to write about is black joy and pleasure, 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 please. And black love and black lives that don't end with viral death. So I've stopped consuming the news. I've deleted all my social media apps, but logged back in later, saw your name repeating as death media. Fresh honeysuckle at dusk smells like sweet earth. Ripe bodies, warm floral notes, heady with romance and nectar. It permeates the day I walk over the bridge, where I often see a single blue heron. Not social, standing stone still, stalking Richland Creek fringed with honeysuckle, which reminds me of any Mary Oliver poem, such pastoral pleasures. I'm also still thinking about Claudia Rankine's blossoming blood list of black bodies broken from police brutality inside Citizen on page 134. The memoriam fades into the sheer forecast of names we know will come. I picked the sestina for its obsessive listing and twisting. I've selected the sestina to probe a problem I can name but can't answer. The N words are planets orbiting the math, pleasure, death, honeysuckle, black bodies, social media, every day. Every day, here are some of the plants and trees I've collected during my walks. I take pictures on my phone so an app can tell me what they are. Ginkgo, bristly locust, maiden pink, garden star of Bethlehem, wild pansy, bird-eye speedwell, eastern redbud, Japanese cherry, apricot, peach, American holly, beefsteak plant, maypop, common blue wood aster, calico aster, eastern white pine, southern sugar maple, scarlet morning glory. Every day, I walk past Dutchman's Curve, the eerie site of the great train wreck of 1918. Deadliest train wreck in American history, which killed 101 people, mostly African Americans, headed to a factory to make weapons for World War I. They were stuffed in rickety wooden cars in the front due to segregation, the front being the most dangerous spot on a train about to crash, while white bodies were in still Pullman cars in the back, protected. But at 100 miles per hour, the wooden cars with black bodies telescoped, splintered, and caught fire immediately upon impact with another train on the blind curve. The historian David Ewing describes bodies writhing in pain, bodies without heads and limbs, bodies unidentified, maimed. Quote, the African Americans that were on this train did not have a chance to survive given where they were. Quote, the cornfield on both sides of the track were trampled by many feet and littered with fragments of iron and wood hurled from the demolished cars. The dead lay here and there grotesquely sprawling where they fell. The dying moaned appeals for aid, or speechless, rolled their heads from side to side and writhed in agony. Everywhere there was blood and suffering and chaos. The Tennessean, June 10th, 1918. They asked local butchers to come help manage the gore and horror. Still 5 unidentified African-American women and 3 unidentified African-American men destroyed beyond recognition. The railroad masonry abutments remain. I touched them today. I went on a first date last Thursday. We both leaned into each other's mouths like 2 tipped tulips and just kissed each other at a bar called Answer, as if that was an answer it wasn't. But it was instinctual, sudden, and all pleasure. We kissed all the way down Murphy Road, walking back to our cars, constellation of our juicy hands everywhere. We kissed and groped, and I stopped obsessively thinking about death for a few moments, maybe even for a whole evening, which was the length of a tercet, an envoy sustained with pleasure, reaching for black desire, reaching for the transcendence of pain, if possible. Is it possible? Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your attention.